So things are changing in your body. You're not sure why. You're wondering, is it my thyroid? Is it your hormones? Today, we're going to differentiate between the two of them.
Introducing the Paramena Bliss Podcast, a show dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of achieving optimal health naturally as you transition into perimenopause and menopause. Get ready to join your host, Dr. Seth Yates, an experienced naturopathic doctor, acupuncturist, and kinesiologist, as he shares his wealth of knowledge acquired from over 40,000 patient visits and 15 years in working with perimenopausal females. Welcome to the Paramena Bliss Podcast.
Hey, this is Doc Yates. Welcome to the Paramena Bliss Podcast, brought to you by PerimenalBliss.com, ablehealth.us. And today I want to talk about the top 10 tips for differentiating thyroid versus hormone. So, because that's the thing, a lot of this can overlap, and especially if you're in that perimenopausal age range, like most of my listeners are, it could be either, and it could be both. But let's dive into it. So, top 10 tips. Number one, what is it your age? Just lay it out there, is your age. If you're getting these changes and you're in your 20s and everything's happened to your body, you're not sure why, like you're gaining weight, your energy's getting tired, you're exhausted, chances are it's more likely to be thyroid. But again, if you're in your mid-40s, early 50s, we want to rule out both. So age plays a role, but let's dive into point number 2. That's your temperature. The differentiating point between hormone imbalance and thyroid imbalance is temperature plays a big role. For thyroid changes, you're generally getting colder. You're getting more sensitive to cold. You're getting colder hands and feet. Whereas hormones start to change, people generally get warmer. And they want the fan on. They want to sleep with the blankets off. They want the window open. They want to be cold and their husband's freezing, where he used to be the warm one and now you're the warm one. That's the change. And sometimes it's subtle things. You're like, oh, you know what? I always used to be the one who was wearing 2 sweaters, and now I'm the one in the t-shirt. What is happening here? And then again, if you start getting hot flashes or night sweats, that's a real giveaway that we are dealing more with hormonal changes. The third point to differentiate between thyroid and hormones is your eyes, or more specifically, your under eyes. For hormone imbalance, you're more likely just to see some darkness under the eyes, especially because of sleep disturbances. Whereas for thyroid imbalances, you will see a lot more puffiness under the eyes, like the real heavier bags under the eyes, despite the fact that you might even be sleeping fine. And this is because thyroid causes some water retention underneath that area, and you can see a lot of puffiness in the eyelids, and that really makes your eyes puff out a lot more compared to hormones. So if you see a lot more puffiness, think thyroid. If it's just dark because of sleep disturbances, you're thinking more hormones. The next factor differentiating between thyroid and hormone is your nails. This is helpful because with thyroid, you're going to see a lot more dry, brittle, splitting nails. With hormones, you can see that, but it's generally not as prevalent as for thyroid. So if you got a history of really brittle nails, you can't grow them out. You're kind of always end up switching to the fake nails or that thick coating they put on to protect your nails because your nails will just break on their own. You're thinking thyroid. The fifth factor for differentiating between thyroid imbalance and hormone imbalance is your hair. The problem is it's not that great of a differentiating factor because it overlaps too much. Both can lead to thinning of the hair. Both can lead to thinner and more dry and brittle hair. So it doesn't really give a lot of clues. It just tells you that you should probably look into both of them at that point. The sixth factor is your weight. And here's the thing. It may seem like that's not that differentiating a factor between thyroid and hormones, but here's the difference in your weight between thyroid and hormones. For thyroid, you're just gaining more weight despite not doing anything different, and you're gaining it, but you're gaining it generally in the same way you always did, just more of it. So more in your legs, more in your hips, maybe more in your chest. Whereas hormonal weight gain, when there's a change in perimenopause, you start gaining it in areas that you never really had issues before. So you might be gaining weight a lot more, typically more in your stomach and abdomen, whereas before if you only maybe gained it in your hips and thighs or chest. So you start getting, with hormone changes, you often see people getting more of like that apple shape as opposed to the pear shape. The seventh factor to differentiate between thyroid and hormones is your energy. And here's the thing, both of those can seem the same at first. They can both just be low energy. But here the difference is because of sleep. In a low energy case, because of hormone imbalance, it's usually because they start getting sleep disturbances. They're not sleeping properly through the night, they're waking up, they're having problems falling back asleep. Whereas with low energy with a thyroid case, they're sleeping through the night, but then they're waking up in the morning and they're still exhausted. They're not recovering from their sleep, even though they had a good night's sleep. So that is the big difference in energy for thyroid versus hormone. The next difference is skin. And I would say, unfortunately, skin's a lot like hair. You will see a lot more drying out of the skin. Sometimes you can see a little puffiness, but that can be because of thyroid water retention, or it could be related to estrogen dominance water retention, depending on where you are in perimenopause. Either way, if you are seeing drying of your skin, it could be an indication of either. The ninth factor to differentiate between thyroid and hormones is mood. With hormonal changes, you are generally more likely to see people get more teary or sad or irritable. Whereas for thyroid changes, it's the person's just so tired, it's just that they feel burnt out, exhausted, kind of like they just can't handle anymore because they just don't have the energy to deal with it. And in those cases, that's a lot more thyroid. Again, if you see the strong irritability changes, lack of patience when you normally used to be a very patient person, you're thinking hormones. And the 10th factor for differentiating between thyroid and hormones is your lab. So get your lab work done. You want to check your estrogen and progesterone around day 22 to 24 of your cycle, or especially during the time if you're getting PMS. And if you don't have a cycle at all, then you can just check at any time. And for your thyroid, you want to get the full panel done, get your TSH, free T3, free T4, get all of that checked. Look at it all together, because often it's not just one or the other. It's not uncommon for both of these changes to occur simultaneously. When you see hormonal changes, it can trigger thyroid changes and vice versa. So it's important to notice that though I put labs as the 10th point, it doesn't mean that I think it's the least important, but I also don't think it's the most important. There's too many times I've seen people come in with, all of the textbook symptoms of thyroid or hormones, and then the doctor takes one quick look at not that in-depth of a lab and like, nope, you're fine. It's just all in your head. And the person leaves feeling terrible. When we go into more details and we look at it, maybe it's a subclinical hypothyroid case, or maybe it's subclinical hormone changes. And then while that means that you're not going to be taking hormones as treatment, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be doing any work to support these systems. So I hope this information was helpful. This is Doc Yates, and I am signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to the Paramena Bliss podcast. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and visit paramenobliss.com for more valuable information on how you can thrive during your transition through perimenopause. Join our community of like-minded women who are dedicated to achieving optimal health naturally, and stay up to date with the latest tips, tricks, and advice from Dr. Seth Yates. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Paramena Bliss podcast.